Alright everyone, it's time for today's second video. You know how the Biden administration keeps saying the border crisis is getting better, it's not really that bad. You know how apologists for the Biden administration, several of which I've debated, like, oh no, actually Trump was worse on the border. There were fewer deportations, and you point out that that's because there were fewer people crossing and their eyes glaze over and they just don't understand basic reality because they're just fixated, they don't understand anything about statistics. Well, we do have new statistics here, new numbers. A record number of illegals crossed the U.S. border in October. We have a new record. I can't even remember the exact fucking total. Link in the description, archived of course. Wonderful. So see, the Biden administration's policy is working. He's not doing anything to try to stop this. You have a border czar who, keep in mind, the buck stops with Biden, not with Kamala Harris. She's border czar. Apparently, the President of the United States, over the course of almost 10 months, has not yet commanded his border czar to visit the border. She went months ago to El Paso, already months belated, and sat on the tarmac and gave a quick speech and then left. She was a couple miles from the border, but she wasn't at the border. She flew over it. It was within view briefly. She was probably too busy eating one of Nancy Pelosi's $50 fucking ice cream bars with the artisanal truffle sauce. This is insane. And by the way, this isn't getting better because there's no attempt to make it better. I wonder why Biden's approval and Kamala's approval even more keep cratering. It's funny, the Sinophiles claiming that Biden was doing okay, actually better than Trump. There were more deportations. Yes. But if you guard the border and make it clear to people, don't come, and I don't mean like Kamala going to Guatemala, hey, that rhymed, and saying, please don't come, after months and months of saying, oh yeah, come all ye faithful, everything's fine, give us those huddled masses. That doesn't work because people aren't taking you seriously. What's happened also is you're seeing a new strategy with regards to illegal migration across the U.S. border. In the past, mostly small groups of people, families and stuff, they'd try to avoid detection and cross in the middle of the night. Then you developed better night vision and monitoring systems that begins to not work as well. So they've developed a new strategy. The new strategy is to get a bunch of those groups together into a giant caravan. Thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of people. And then wait for an opportune moment and charge across the border. The problem with tackling that is this. Unless there is a cohesive border defense system in their way, a wall, etc., to impede their movement, when they begin moving across, you have limited options about stopping them. You can form up hundreds or thousands of riot cops that have to stand there 24/7, presumably to stop the horde from coming. You can tear gas them or use rubber bullets. Dubiously, if you're operating on an international border, by the way, that has its own problems. Then you get the lowbrow media showing people clips of the evil police and the evil administration being so mean to the migrants. These are just a bunch of babies that want to have a better life, and you're shooting them with rubber bullets. And look, this mamacita here lost an eye. This has happened before. It happened not long ago with the Haitian migrants. Thousands of people in a caravan who aren't even from the same fucking continent. They're from the Caribbean region. At the border, they draw up in an area that, by the way, Trump had earmarked to be improved, to have the bollard wall and the monitoring systems, and Biden didn't fund them once he got into office. When his asterisk administration began, he canned all those projects. Whoops! Wouldn't have happened there at the Del Rio crossing if Trump had had his way, because the bollard would already be there. And those migrants didn't appear to have ladders. I love it when people say, well, ha ha ha, this 30-foot electronically monitored, after a 100-yard no man's land usually, wall or fence or whatever you want to call it, could be undermined by a ladder that you bought at Home Depot. Ha ha ha. I'm thinking to myself, you know, okay, it's certainly, the goal mainly is to throttle the movement, channel the movement, slow it down, and therefore allow the agents to do their job. When you don't have a barrier there, they get overwhelmed by thousands, tens of thousands of people. That's the new strategy. The new strategy is a massive migrant group. The men are usually at the front. That's, by the way, some people are saying, whoa, I see a lot of fighting age males. I don't see any kids and stuff. That's because they're behind, usually. Because you don't generally take a 3-year-old to the front lines to get tear gassed, unless you're sadistic. Leftoids, by the way, occasionally do this at riots and stuff. So they push through, and once it becomes clear the area, they're not going to be impeded, everyone else storms through too. That's why we need a border wall. It's why we need, arguably, something even better than the 30-foot barrier in some parts of it. It's why we should double up the number of people guarding the border. It's why we should arguably devolve power to the states to additionally staff the border, because the federal government is intermittently unwilling to do so, as it's not now. A record number of people crossed because they know that there's less of an impedance to their movement. When Trump was president, it wasn't that at first there was any more wall or fence than there was before. He hadn't built it yet. It's not that there were more agents. It took him a year to get that funded. When Trump first got into office, there was no real tangible difference at the U.S. border. And yet the number of people coming dropped, and therefore the deportations dropped. And another reason the deportations dropped is sanctuary states, but that's a separate issue. What happened is that people perceived that Trump would stop them. They said, look, this dude is actually, he's walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. I don't know that I want to risk crossing the border because he's talking about throwing me in the fucking camp. But Biden, despite technically doing the same thing, again, no real tangible change at the border other than not finishing the construction of some 100 miles or so of additional bollard, other than wasting $1 billion and letting the stuff rust out in the sun, Biden hasn't changed anything at the southern border with regards to virtually anything other than attempting to ignore Remain in Mexico. Another unconstitutional misstep that he got shot down by a federal court for. Nothing else has changed, except the optics. Nobody believes Biden will fulfill his word. And by and large, he won't. Because he doesn't want the optics. He doesn't want exactly what happened in Haiti to happen. He doesn't want the liberal media or someone with a smartphone to take a picture, and it appears to depict, and it didn't, the legacy media ran with it, people getting whipped, people getting tear gassed, Mamacita getting hit by a rubber bullet. Here's a little child, he got nudged gently by the Humvee and fell over and he was crying and his mom was wailing, and this is a crime against humanity. He doesn't want to have to deal with this. See, Trump didn't care. Trump is a hardliner, self-branded. Biden, meanwhile, campaigned on the come all ye people, give me your tired and poor platform. He did a 180 the second he got into office, which is a standard neoliberal procedure. But to get the leftoids on board, he had to promise that he wouldn't deport anyone, he'd let everyone in, we'd give them all free shit, and this is leftism, basically. You know, one world government. You don't want an international border to even exist. You don't even want state borders. Except in Kenosha, of course. Just saying, that one border is really, really important to a lot of people that really hate the idea of borders. Just noting that, not the first one to do it. Nothing else changed other than the optics. And so we get this shit. And by the way, to all the workers of the world who want to unite, why do you think your wages are low? Could it be that there are tens of millions of slaves in the country that don't have full legal representation and can be exploited in a moment's notice? I don't care if the Biden administration said, well, we're not going to impede them. We're not going to deport you if you go to the court. They understand they can still be harassed. Sometimes their own community doesn't know that they're illegal because they're used to having to deal with the idea of an ICE raid. They're not going to go to the court. If they're getting a couple dollars an hour under minimum wage, you think they give a fucking rat's ass? Half of them are in sweatshops anyway. They don't have a legal status. You don't even realize they exist. And they're not going outside. They're not getting delivery. They're getting DiGiorno. And then probably can't even afford that, actually, most of the time. That's about all. Peace out.